Welcome to the Acro movement framework. This is a journey into freeing your movement, learning beautiful and powerful skills, and rediscovering the simple joy of moving your body with ease. Throughout this masterclass, I'll guide you through a proven approach to learning acrobatic movement, how to practice, how to structure your learning, how to build real capacity, and how to navigate the immense world of movement possibilities without getting lost in it. And because in the end, this practice goes far beyond isolated tricks or impressive skills. The real goal is becoming a capable mover, someone who feels fluid, adaptable, confident, creative, and at home within their body. And in order to understand how we can get there, let's first take a look at what I call the hierarchy of movement freedom. As there are countless ways of moving and many different elements that shape this practice, it's important to first develop a clear overview of what movement freedom actually consists of. Because only then can you begin identifying which areas might holding you back and where your biggest opportunities for growth lie. At the very center of movement freedom lies awareness, the ability to truly sense your own body and notice subtle internal changes while moving. Feeling shifts in tension, weight distribution, rhythm, force production, balance, and coordination within yourself. The next layer is capacity and coordination. Capacity refers to your mobility and strength. How strong are you through different ranges of motion and how comfortably can you access those ranges? Coordination, meanwhile, is the way you organize your body in stillness and movement. It is the ability to discover more efficient movement solutions and body configurations over less efficient ones. Together, capacity and coordination form a major foundation for how freely and effectively you're able to move. These qualities can absolutely become limiting factors later in the journey, so it makes sense to work on them from the start. Beyond that lies confidence and trust. As movement becomes more dynamic, it is completely natural to encounter fear barriers. Learning how to approach fear carefully and intelligently is an essential part of the process. Not by ignoring fear, but by developing a healthier relationship to it. The next layer consists of movement skill patterns. Your ability to move skillfully through a broad range of situations. Rolls, inversions, crawls, floor entries, arches, jumps, locomotion patterns, and much more. These are often the eye-catching tricks that people see and immediately want to learn. And finally, at the outer edge of the hierarchy, we arrive at creativity and expression. The ability to move in a way that feels uniquely your own, going beyond simply reproducing techniques and instead finding genuine freedom, flow, and self-expression through movement. Understanding all of these layers and honestly assessing where you currently stand is one of the cornerstones of a sustainable movement practice. One that is not built on sand, but on real foundation. To move towards this kind of movement freedom, we need a smart method that addresses all layers of the hierarchy of movement freedom and helps you identify where your biggest limitations currently are. Right now, most people find themselves somewhere on one side of the spectrum. Either you try to learn random skills you come across online, jumping from tutorial to tutorial, from one movement to the next. But because there are endless skills to choose from, the process quickly becomes overwhelming. And even when you finally find a skill you genuinely want to learn, it often feels too complex and out of reach. So you keep hopping from move to move, hoping that eventually something will click. But for many people, it never really does. A much more sustainable approach is learning through a method that gives you a clear pathway. Understanding which skills to focus on, how to break them down into manageable steps, how different movement patterns support each other, and what kind of preparation work helps you progress safely and efficiently. In this way, you gradually work through all layers of the hierarchy of movement freedom while building an actual foundation underneath your practice. I often compare this process to sharpening your knife before chopping vegetables. A sharp knife is not only faster, it is safer, more precise, and far more enjoyable to work with. In the same way, spending proper time with preparation and approaching movement with the right method creates a practice that is far more enjoyable and sustainable. And that combination of joy, consistency, and intelligent practice is what leads to real progress over time. You might be wondering, why am I the person teaching all of this? And when I first got into acrobatic movement, I was nowhere near capable of doing the things I can do today. I wasn't some sort of gymnastics prodigy kid, and I didn't move with a lot of freedom and ease. Like Like many other adults stepping into this practice, I struggled with stiffness, fear, poor coordination, inconsistency, and long periods where it felt like nothing was working. So over the years, I started to understand that movement freedom is not built by random skills alone. I really looked into what was limiting my progress. Mobility in certain ranges, confidence in dynamic movement, coordination, how to structure learning, and how to make difficult skills approachable instead of overwhelming. And since then, I've taught thousands of students through workshops, coaching, and my online programs. People of different ages, backgrounds, and starting points. Complete beginners, former athletes, people who thought they were too stiff or too old for this kind of practice. And over again, I saw the same thing happen. People developing skills they never thought possible, becoming more capable and confident in their bodies. A big reason why I teach this work is because I know exactly what it feels like to struggle through it as an adult. I know how frustrating it can be to feel disconnected from your body, overwhelmed by all of the information out there, or stuck repeating the same mistakes without understanding why. So the Acro movement framework came out of years trying to solve all of these problems, at first for me, and then later for all of the students I've had the privilege to work with. Instead of leaving all of this as abstract theory, let's actually take a look at how all of this process plays out in real practice. And for that, we can use one of the dream skills for many people entering soft acrobatics, the elusive Macaco. Just by observing the movement and identifying its key positions, we already get a strong understanding of the mobility, strength, and coordination required. One of the most important positions is the one-arm bridge shape, a position that also appears throughout many other acrobatic movement patterns. Here, the shoulders are pushed into deep extension, requiring mobility and strength in a range that many people are initially unfamiliar with. This can be prepared progressively through exercises such as the bridge wall rotation, which teaches the body how to open and stabilize within that position. At the same time, the hips need to extend powerfully while driving through the balls of the feet. Elevated sissy squats are a great way to isolate this pattern and build awareness for the coordination required. But acrobatic movements are not static by nature. They're highly dynamic. So once we understand the key positions, we need to find ways of bringing them into motion. This is where movements like Macaco reach jumps become incredibly valuable. They don't just test whether you can hold the position statically, but begin introducing core mechanics of the actual skill itself. Once we've studied the mobility and strength requirements and put it to dynamic application, it's time to find the right progression for you. Because just like you wouldn't kick into a handstand and expect to balance immediately, you also can't simply throw yourself backwards into a Macaco and hope for the best. A much more appropriate starting point might be something as simple as low circular kicks. And even here, if we think back to the hierarchy of movement freedom, the movement only truly works when performed with awareness. Understanding how your weight shifts when pressure transfers and how the body organizes itself throughout the motion. And because movement skill learning is so complex, approaching it with many tools you can choose from instead of just relying on one method is extremely helpful. One of the most effective learning methods is working with regressions, easier versions of a movement that will preserve the core ability of the final skill. By practicing these simpler versions, you gradually build what are often called mental representations. These are deeply ingrained movement building blocks that become more stable over time and later transfer into more advanced progressions. Another powerful method is using external objects as constraints to guide learning. For example, placing a small hurdle behind you during a Macaco creates an incentive for the body to organize itself differently in order to clear the obstacle. Instead of consciously controlling every tiny detail, the body begins adapting automatically to the challenge presented. This process is often referred to as self-organization, when many different parts of a system intuitively coordinate themselves together. Through combining all of these different learning methods, in the end we create a process that is not only super effective, but also very enjoyable. One that really understands and hones how movement learning works on a neurological level. And this exact approach can be applied to almost every movement skill out there. Understanding and training key positions, adding dynamics, finding the right progression for you, all that using different learning methods that support you on your journey. But the process doesn't stop here, because in the end, I don't care if you can copy moves like a robot or a machine. I want you to be able to move with ease, freedom, adaptability, and creativity. Over time, we begin connecting movements together, transitioning between patterns, and building an increasingly rich vocabulary of movement. And what this process can look like in real life becomes very clear through Satya's movement journey.
Being able to move freely, to connect acrobatics in an effortless way, that has always been a dream of mine. Before I met Neil, I knew some basic moves in isolation, but they never felt fluid or connected. That changed about 6 years ago when I started the online programs. What makes these courses really different is that you just don't learn new skills, but you learn how to learn. And that's something you rarely come by these days. You learn to be creative, to create your own variations, to look at movement from different angles and to combine them with the things you already know. And that provides a much deeper understanding of everything. And that's the time that everything clicked for me. I could now improvise, experiment, and also express myself through the moves. So if you're really serious about movement, this is it.
Now that we've seen what becomes possible when someone dedicates themselves to developing all layers of the hierarchy of movement freedom, you still might be wondering, why even acrobatics? Is it really safe to practice highly dynamic skills like this as an adult? I get where you're coming from, because it's not exactly common to see adults rolling through parks, inverting in gyms, or moving freely and openly in public spaces without feeling self-conscious. These qualities are usually associated with children, but as we grow older, many of us slowly conform to movement behaviors that society considers more appropriate. We become more careful, more constrained, and often far less expressive in the way we move. At the same time, the fitness industry often teaches us that movement should always remain highly controlled. Straight spines, slow execution, carefully measured positions, not too much risk, not too much unpredictability. Better safe than sorry, I guess. But because of this, many adults never get to experience the richness and freedom of movement that can emerge through a smart and well-structured acrobatic practice. Which is unfortunate, because these abilities are far more accessible than most people think. And if you suddenly throw yourself into unfamiliar positions, force movements your body is not prepared for, repeatedly crash into the floor, or train without proper structure, will likely feel the consequences sooner or later. And this is exactly why having a smart and sustainable process matters so much, which is where the Acro movement framework comes in. The beauty of this practice is that you're not only learning impressive or beautiful skills that bring joy and excitement into your life, you are developing fundamental human movement abilities that become surprisingly useful far beyond acrobatics itself. And one of the abilities I genuinely hope that all of us can maintain for as long as possible is simply being able to move comfortably into and out of the floor. And through this practice, instead of the floor being something uncomfortable, it becomes something very familiar, something supportive even. You develop a relationship to it. You learn how to lower yourself down with ease, how to transition through it efficiently, how to recover from it confidently, and how to use it creatively. Beyond that, acrobatic has the potential to teach you something even deeper: how to approach fear and ultimately overcome it. More specifically, the fear of falling, a fear that exists within every human being and subtly influences far more of our lives than we often realize. And the cool thing is, all of these qualities will seep into the rest of your life, often creating a feeling of greater vitality, more confidence and trust in yourself, and more openness and willingness to explore new things. And of course, there is a massive difference between exercising because you feel like you should, because it's supposedly healthy, or moving because you are genuinely fascinated by what you are learning. We all know the feeling that when something is truly rewarding, you want more of it, you want to stick to it, and acrobatics has the potential for all of that. Because the combination of unusual positions, playful exploration, dynamic movement, creativity, and meaningful progression keeps the practice alive. It keeps you curious, it keeps you engaged, and slowly, bit by bit, movement doesn't feel like something you have to do, but something you want to return to over and over again. But even with all of this in mind, there still remains the big question. Where do you even start? At first glance, acrobatic movement can feel incredibly overwhelming. There seem to be hundreds of skills, endless movement possibilities, and countless directions one could go into. And without a clear overview, it's easy to feel lost before even truly beginning. So if you find yourself currently in this exact situation, let me present 5 acrobatic movement categories that form the backbone of this practice. You can view them as the 5 pillars supporting the house of soft acrobatics. If I had to choose just one ability from this video for you to take away, it would be this one: rolling. Because it's not just a great looking skill, it's a foundational human movement pattern. People across many cultures and disciplines use it, most notably in martial arts or parkour. But beyond that, it's essential for anyone who wants to stay physically capable in older age. And the reason for that is very simple: falling. The chances that you'll fall at least once in your adult life are pretty much 100%. And the chance of getting hurt doing so, also not that low. So what ability could help with that? You guessed it, rolling. Even though it's a natural human movement pattern, many of us never properly learn it. Some of us are lucky if we were put into something like judo or gymnastics as kids, where rolling is taught early on, but most people don't have that experience. So we go through life without really knowing how to catch ourselves when falling. And it shows. Injuries from falls are increasing even in younger people. So yeah, it's about time to change that. And beyond being incredibly useful, rolls are just beautiful. A mix of elegance, power, control, and trust. I personally love rolling just for the sake of it. In the Acro movement framework, I like to start with these 3 variations: diagonal rolls, side rolls, and circular rolls, the holy trinity of the falling curriculum. Each of them maps your body in a slightly different way and creates pathways across your torso that you can access from all kinds of angles. Becoming a human ball takes a bit of time. If you feel more like a cube at first, that's completely normal. I've been there too. Practice on a soft surface if you can. If not, just throw a blanket on the floor and maybe wear a hoodie. Alright, before we all get too dizzy, let's move on. If there is one ability that people love so much and really want to learn, it's going upside down. Handstands are everywhere these days, in gyms, parks, social media, and honestly, I think that's great. They look amazing, they feel amazing, and they represent a high level of body control. And the journey towards a handstand is just as valuable, because you build strength, mobility, body awareness, and maybe most importantly, consistency. Now in acrobatics, a handstand is nice to have, but it's not required, because you can absolutely explore inversions and transitions from feet to hands without ever balancing perfectly on your hands. What matters much more is this: you have the strength to support yourself upside down, and you're able to fall and catch yourself safely with trust. Because that ability opens the door to a huge range of movements, from very simple to quite advanced. Whenever I talk about inversions, people also ask about arching skills. Which brings us to the next ability. Arching is basically what happens if you take something like a cartwheel and put it on steroids. It represents a body that can handle force, that bends instead of snapping, and at the same time looks incredibly expressive. And the good part is, you don't need to be a circus performer in order to start experiencing this. And what's really great is that all of these drills also will benefit you outside of acrobatic practice. They all share a similar foundation. Your shoulders learn to stabilize in external rotation, which helps open up your overhead range. The muscles around your shoulder blades and ribcage get stronger, allowing better force transfer between your limbs and your core. Your spine becomes stronger in extension, giving you that bendy but resilient core set. And your glutes and legs support the whole structure, turning them into something solid you can rely on. Let's continue with the next ability, groundwork. Rolling is one way to enter the floor dynamically. There, you need to create a structure which you can access through falling. This ability now is more about control, about folding. Think of it like human origami. So going into the floor and standing up again is something we constantly do. Just think about this morning when you woke up and got out of bed, or when looking for that annoying thing stuck under your sofa, the 100th burpee in your CrossFit class. I think you get the point. But once you refine this ability and start adding different pathways, it becomes something much more interesting. In dance and movement, we often call this flow work, a style of moving that I personally love to bits. It's basically about flowing with gravity and the ground instead of fighting them, like having a dance with them. And you would be surprised how easy some of these patterns are and how much variation there is. Now that we've folded ourselves like a pretzel, turned the world upside down, rolled, entered the floor and so much more, there is one thing missing, one ability that so many people fear, but actually the one with the most potential for growth and development. And while not everyone wants to learn flips or twists, hear me out. Because at its core, airborne acrobatics come down to three things: jumping, landing, and what happens in between. Now, most people just focus on this middle part, but jumping and landing are where the real value is for most people. They build power, elasticity, and explosiveness. They turn your legs into something like springs, ready to move in all directions. And when you've mastered this, you're ready to tackle the most exciting aerial maneuvers. The basics, of course, are being introduced in the Acro movement framework. Of course, these 5 categories are just the beginning. Later, there are many more to unravel. Also, in each of them, you'll find many subcategories, variation, and endless opportunities for exploration. Over time, they also begin blending together, adding rolls into inversions, combining floor movement with jumps, transitioning between arches and locomotion patterns, creating entirely new pathways and movement expression. See, every category strengthens and supports the others. And ultimately, this interconnectedness is one of the central ideas behind the Acro movement framework. Because what I'm after here is not simply collecting isolated party tricks. The goal is to build a real movement system, a practice where different abilities support one another, where movement becomes increasingly adaptable and expressive, and where skill, creativity, confidence and joy evolve together over time. But what matters most for now is understanding that developing at least some familiarity in all of these categories already opens up a lot of movement freedom. And with that being said, let's go to the next important question. How much mobility do you actually need for acrobatics? The answer might surprise you. It is not nearly as much as you would think. In reality, many foundational movement skills can already be learned with fairly normal levels of strength and mobility. Most of my students begin with no prior background in acrobatics at all and are often surprised by how much becomes possible once they approach movement through a structured and progressive process. Now, of course, the deeper you move into the practice, the more mobility and strength begin to matter. But even then, it is usually less about achieving extreme flexibility and more about becoming strong, confident, and adaptable within the specific ranges your movements actually require. Generally speaking, this capacity develops through 2 main pathways. The first one happens naturally through practice itself. When you expose your body to certain positions and movement patterns consistently, it gradually adapts to the demands placed upon it. Over time, your tissues become more resilient, your coordination improves, and your body adapts to the specific positions. However, if we rely only on this passive adaptation process, progress can become unnecessarily slow. And this is where the second pathway becomes invaluable: specific mobility and strength training. This means deliberately developing strength, awareness, and confidence in the key positions that repeatedly appear throughout acrobatic movement. Examples of these positions include the one-arm bridge for arching patterns we've looked at before, the dish position for rolling mechanics, or long lunges and wide stances for lower body mobility. Reaching even an intermediate level within these capacities can dramatically improve your overall movement experience and make learning skills feel significantly smoother and safer. And thankfully for you, all of these elements are carefully interwoven into the Acro movement framework. You are not simply being thrown into complex movement without preparation. Let me reiterate once again what the ultimate goal behind the Acro movement framework is. The goal is to help you move with greater freedom, ease, joy, longevity, and capability, while also equipping you with the tools to express yourself creatively through movement. And in order to arrive there, we need to look at one final piece of the puzzle: improvisation and free movement. Because learning skills, improving mobility, and building strength is one thing, But if you never allow yourself to simply move, explore, and play with what you've learned, you will never fully experience the beautiful sense of flow and connectedness that draws so many people into this practice in the first place. And this is why a typical session in the Acro movement framework looks like this. First, you are being warmed up with light play or coordinative tasks. We then go into specific mobility that we then apply dynamically into the skill we want to learn. And here you'll spend a lot of time to actually break it down with the regressions and progressions that are right for you. We then lastly finalize it with either free play or work on sequencing and transitioning. At the same time, one of the beautiful things about this practice is how adaptable it is to real life. Not every session needs to follow the exact same structure, and not every person has the same goals or schedule. Some days you might only have 30 minutes before work or before another training session, and that is already enough to make meaningful progress. If you feel like your biggest limitation currently lies within mobility or strength, you can simply dedicate shorter sessions entirely toward building capacity. These can pair beautifully with other sports or become part of a short morning routine. Other times you may want to focus deeply on one or two specific skills. In that case, you can warm up through light preparation work and then spend 30 to 45 minutes exploring regressions, drills, and variations around those movements. Sessions like these, repeated a few times per week, already lead to very solid progress. And once you already possess a movement vocabulary, you can begin organizing simple play sessions, building small movement sequences, focusing on transitions, continuity, and eventually improvisation and freer movement exploration. And ultimately, this flexibility is one of the core ideas behind the Acro movement framework. Because none of us need to master the most extreme skills imaginable. For many people, the deeper goal is to simply enjoy movement again, have a playful counterbalance to harder forms of training, and feel more free, capable, and connected within their bodies. Leo is a wonderful example of what is achievable through sticking to exactly this process. Before entering the Acro movement framework, he already had experience with fire dancing and staff manipulation. Throughout the practice, he added new movement skills and expanded his physical abilities. But far more importantly, he found a new layer of meaning and expression within movement itself.
I always wanted to be able to express myself through movement, to move freely, learn crazy skills, of course, and tap into the flow state is something that I really care about as a performer. But more than that, I didn't want to feel limited in life because of my body, and I wanted to feel capable and adaptable, both physically and mentally, to my body. When I first found this program, what really struck me was how accessible it is. No matter where you start, you feel like you can actually do it. It allows you to build not just flashy skills, but movement that feels smooth and controlled. As I kept training, everything started to connect somehow. And it's not just about learning skills. You are building actually strength, mobility, and awareness, of course. Then you start understanding transition and combination between elements, really how to actually move.
Now, Leo is far from being an isolated case here. Thousands of students have followed a similar path into a practice that transformed not only their bodies, but also the way they think about movement itself. And luckily for you, throughout this masterclass, we looked at every single step that is necessary in order to achieve this. We explored the hierarchy of movement freedom, talked about how movement skills are actually learned, explored fear, mobility, creativity, flow, and the deeper role acrobatics can play beyond simply learning impressive tricks. You've seen real students applying these ideas inside their own practice, and hopefully gained a clearer understanding of how movement can evolve into something much more expressive, skillful, and meaningful. And honestly, the only thing left to do is go out there and practice. There is no magic pill, there is no special formula, you just have to go through the process. And of course, there's different ways of practicing. Just hammer out something and try on your own, or go with a system that actually works. And if you want my help in this, simply go into the video description, top and comment, and check out the Acro movement framework. But for now, I know this video has been long and packed with information, so make sure to rewatch certain areas if you didn't just understand them, and also let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I love interacting with people, especially with bigger projects like this, and I hope that in the end you found some information and inspiration to take away for your practice. See you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.